Today, we're diving into the absolutely incredible life of Śrīla Raghunātha Dāsa Gosvāmī. He was a 16th century Indian saint, born a prince, who chose to live like a pauper. Honestly, his story really makes you question everything you think you know about wealth, about success, and what a life is truly for. And really, this is the paradox that his whole life revolved around. I mean, imagine being born with every single privilege you can think of. We're talking wealth, status, a beautiful wife, and then spending your entire life actively pushing it all away, running towards something you believe is infinitely more valuable. The contrast just couldn't be more stark, could it? On one hand, you have the sole heir to a massive fortune, and on the other, what he chose was a life of such extreme spiritual austerity that he eventually lived on food that had literally been thrown away for the cows. So how does someone like that, the heir to a fortune, end up living this way? Well, the story really begins back in his youth. You have to understand, Raghunatha was born into just staggering wealth. His father was a millionaire landowner, basically like a regional king, and Raghunatha was the only son, the only heir. He was even married to a woman who was said to be unbelievably beautiful. But here's the thing. From the time he was a little kid, none of it, not the money, not the power, not the pleasure, held any real attraction for him. So his spiritual spark was lit early on when he met a famous saint. Then, at just 15, he meets his spiritual master, Śrī Chaitanya Mahāprabhu, who is, a central figure in this whole devotional tradition. Raghunatha basically begged to renounce the world and join him right then and there. But his master gave him some pretty surprising advice. He said, "Go home. For now, be an ideal husband, manage your estate." He told him to be patient, and that when the time was right, Krishna would make a way for him. But Raghunatha just couldn't do it. He couldn't be a normal family man. His desire for a purely spiritual life was so overwhelming that his family felt they had to take some pretty extreme measures just to keep him at home. Can you imagine? He tried to run away so many times that his father finally hired 10 guards to watch him around the clock. He was basically a prisoner in his own luxurious home, trapped by his family's love and, well, their total inability to understand his spiritual calling. And there was this really telling moment. Raghunatha's mother, completely frustrated, told her husband to just tie their son up to keep him from leaving. But his father came back with this incredible realization. He said, "A rope cannot tie someone whom immense wealth and a beautiful wife couldn't tie." He understood that if the golden chains of luxury couldn't hold his son, a simple rope was just useless. So he finally came up with this really clever plan. He pretended he was going to see his teacher off, and then he just slipped away. He knew his family would search the main road to the holy city of Puri, so he walked in the complete opposite direction for a full day. After hiding overnight in a barn, he began this grueling 12-day journey, traveling over 400 miles on foot and surviving on almost no food at all. And he finally made it. You can just picture him, completely exhausted, arriving in the city of Puri and falling at the feet of his master, Chaitanya Mahāprabhu. And he was welcomed so warmly. His teacher told him that divine mercy had finally freed him from what he called the ditch of materialistic life. And for the next 16 years, Raghunatha would live and learn right there, directly under his master's guidance. So his master boiled down the entire devotional life into these 5 core instructions. They seem simple, right? Avoid worldly gossip. Don't go after fine food or fancy clothes. Respect everyone, but don't expect it back. Constantly chant the holy names. And, in your mind, serve the divine. These simple rules became the absolute bedrock of Raghunatha's entire life. Now, Raghunatha took these instructions to a whole other level. He completely refused any money from his family. At first, he begged for food, but then he felt even that was too much, so he started collecting leftover rice from the temple kitchens, the stuff they were throwing out for the cows. And the story goes that one day, his master found him, took a handful of that same discarded rice and ate it, saying it was the most delicious thing he'd ever tasted, because it was flavored with Raghunatha's pure love and renunciation. So after his master passed away, Raghunatha moved to the holy land of Vṛndāvana. And there, living by this sacred lake called Rādhā-kuṇḍa, his spiritual discipline reached a level that, well, it's almost superhuman. It's almost hard to believe. His daily practices were just staggering. Let's just try to wrap our heads around this. To start, he would chant the holy names of Krishna, it's a form of mantra meditation, 100,000 times, every single day. I mean, that practice alone would take hours and hours to complete. And as if that wasn't enough, as an act of profound humility, He would also offer 2,000 full prostrated obeisances to other spiritual practitioners each day. His dedication was just total. Think about this. He would sleep for just 90 minutes a day, and on some days, he wouldn't sleep at all, spending nearly 22 hours in meditation and prayer. It got to the point where he gave up almost all food, sustaining his body on just a few drops of buttermilk every day or two. The goal, for him, was to completely eliminate any trace of personal sensory pleasure from his life. Now, according to his biographers, this kind of intense, pure devotion started to attract, well, divine interventions. It said that Srimati Radharani, the divine feminine, personally shielded him from the hot sun with her own sari. Another story tells of Krishna himself appearing to protect him from a wild animal. Even the expansion of the sacred lake was said to be divinely arranged, with a wealthy merchant instructed in a dream to donate his entire fortune to the project. So you might be asking, what's the point of all this? What is the lasting impact of a life that extreme? What did he actually leave behind for the world? Raghunātha Dāsa Gosvāmī earned this really special title, Prayojana Acharya. It means he was the master who reveals the ultimate goal of life, not by talking about it, but by his own example. He didn't just teach the path, he was the path. His life itself was his greatest teaching. He was one of the famous Six Gosvāmīs of Vṛndāvana, this core group of disciples who were responsible for writing down and systematizing the theology for all future generations. And while he did author important books of prayer, everyone agrees his most enduring contribution was his own life, a perfect, living example of pure, uncompromising devotion. And this prayer, from one of his writings, it just perfectly sums it all up. It captures the singular focus of his entire existence. Everything he gave up, every hardship he went through, was for one single purpose: to attain a state of pure, loving service to the divine. Look, the life of Raghunātha Dāsa Gosvāmī is obviously extreme. It's not a path for most of us, for sure. But it forces you to stop and ask a really fundamental question. He gave up a fortune that most of us can barely even imagine to gain a spiritual treasure he valued infinitely more. And so his story leaves us with this final thought. What do you consider to be real wealth? And what are you willing to give up to get